Meet Anne Lister, a young unmarried woman who resides with her uncle and aunt at Shibden Hall in Yorkshire. She has only one wish, to be with someone who loves her. The only problem is that it is the 19th century, and she prefers women over men. Anne has invented a secret language that allows her to pour her heart out for Mariana Belcombe, the woman she loves, in her diary. It is a typical windy day in Yorkshire, and Anne has yet to join her friends on a picnic. Using her handheld telescope, she scans her surroundings and finds Mariana sitting with her best friend, Tib, before running to join them. Mrs. Priestley introduces Anne to Charles Lawton, a wealthy widower who recently lost his wife. Because Anne desperately wants to meet Mariana, she doesn't waste much time chit-chatting. They take a detour, and Anne wonders why Mrs. Priestley is so keen on them meeting Mr. Lawton. Mariana explains that Mr. Lawton is an old friend of her father. Anne realizes Mariana and her sister are being paraded as a prospective bride for Mr. Lawton. The two women wait for others to walk out of sight before fleeing into the forest to finally be able to enjoy some time in each other's embrace. Anne is madly in love with Mariana and trusts her with her heart, which is why she invites Mariana to accompany her to Shibden. But Mariana looks a bit hesitant and tries deflecting the conversation. Once inside the mansion, Anne entertains everyone with her singing, and Mariana gets busy talking to the other guests. Just then, Mrs. Priestley's shrieks attract everybody's attention, and gleefully, she announces Mr. Lawton's marriage to Mariana. Anne's expressions change, and she drags Mariana with her, pleading with her to marry her. But Mariana sharply asks her to check her behavior, as there are others around, and is soon escorted by Mrs. Priestley for the drinks. Anne is deeply hurt by the events and rushes back to her room, feeling devastated. It is the day of the wedding, and Anne is ready to show her displeasure by wearing black, because she is mourning the loss of her love. Even as the wedding vows are read, Anne wishes for Mariana to reveal the truth and refuse to get married. But it is all wishful thinking, and the wedding goes on. While everybody congratulates the couple, Anne seethes and walks away, wanting to be alone for some time. Once in the woods, where no one can see her, she cries her heart out. Weeks have passed, and Anne is back at Shibden. However, she is still in her mourning phase. Aunt Lister is worried about her niece not eating properly, and goes to check on her. Looking at her frail body, Aunt Lister talks to Anne and explains that it is perfectly alright to feel sad after one loses their friend to marriage. She is oblivious to the actual reason Anne is mourning, and hopes that it will soon be Anne's turn to get married. Anne has had enough of sulking around, so she decides to take control of her life and commits herself to finish her studies. To help her remain focused, she writes in her diary that she will no longer think of Mariana. She will not allow herself to give in to idleness, or it will lead to wretchedness, as she believes. So, for the next 1 year, she dedicates her entire time to studying literature. However, she doesn't lose hope that Mariana will write to her, but even after a year of no word from her, Anne thinks she is better off finding someone else. One day at church, everybody has gathered for the Sunday sermon. Anne takes the opportunity to scan through the crowd and spots a woman she finds attractive. While walking out, Anne deliberately drops her Bible near the woman, who rushes to give it to Anne. They exchange introductions, and the girl's name is Miss Brown. In the coming days, Anne pursues Miss Brown, and is pretty much forward with her efforts. One day, when she catches a glimpse of Miss Brown walking past Anne's mansion, Anne runs to take the opportunity to walk with Miss Brown, arm in arm. They soon develop a great bond of friendship, but they cannot deny the spark they feel with each other. Anne is conscious of all the things she does for Miss Brown, like buying her Byron's Don Juan and writing flirtatious notes on its first page in Greek. Miss Brown is already charmed and wishes Anne was a man. But Anne doesn't mind, as she knows she has worked her way into Miss Brown's heart. During occasional tea parties, the women would inquire about Anne's vision for her future. Instead of talking about marriage as expected, Anne would talk about studies, and how she wants to make a profitable income for herself, rather than depend on a man for her expenses. Anne's friendship with Miss Brown also becomes a topic of discussion, and they don't hold back from pointing out Anne's odd nature, almost calling her a freak. But Anne doesn't take it as an offense and uses her charm on one of the women by complimenting a curl, flattering her. One day Anne gets a letter from Tib, talking about her plans to visit her. A few days later, Tib is in Anne's room, reading her diary. She still is resentful of Mariana for snatching Anne from her and then betraying Anne with Mr. Lawton. Anne and Tib are best friends, but their relationship isn't restricted to just friendship. They would often use each other's body to drive pleasure. And so, she provides Anne with some respite by kissing her and letting her play with her before they meet Miss Brown. Anne is still not sure of developing a relationship with Miss Brown, since she feels Miss Brown is childish and embarrassingly immature. They go on a stroll, and while Miss Brown stresses on Anne producing an heir to the mansion after she inherits it from her uncle, Anne makes it clear she doesn't want to marry, but plans to live in the mansion with a female companion. They reach the gates, and to help Anne get her first kiss from Miss Brown, Tib invents a game and states that Anne doesn't allow anyone to pass through the gates without a kiss. Anne plays along and kisses Tib before turning to Miss Brown, who complies, but soon pulls away, feeling very odd. Anne writes in her diary that she finds Miss Brown attractive, but other than that, Miss Brown has nothing interesting to say. She describes Miss Brown as innocent and unaware of the ways of the world. One evening, Anne returns from her walk and announces she is going to write a book on antiquities. She abruptly stops as she finds a letter waiting for her. It is from Mariana. Anne rushes to her room to read the letter. In the letter, Mariana regrets not contacting her earlier. She further invites Anne to Hotel Albion in Manchester on the 18th of November to meet her alone. Anne doesn't waste any time and soon leaves for Manchester. Mariana is unsure if she'll ever see Anne, or if she has found someone else. But there Anne is, standing before her, happy to see her love again after months of being apart. Anne rushes to kiss Mariana, but stops when she sees Mr. Lawton, who invites Anne to join them for breakfast. Anne feels sick to her stomach, which could be attributed to the sight of Mr. Lawton eating mutton chops, or the fact that he took away Mariana from her. Nevertheless, Anne leaves, saying she isn't feeling well, and goes to her room. Mariana follows and explains that Mr. Lawton surprised her that morning. She pleads with Anne to stay, but Anne can't bring herself to stay, especially after learning that Mr. Lawton provides her with the same pleasure as Anne. Anne brings out her diary and throws it across the room, before she lets go of her emotions and tells Mariana how much she has been suffering after Mariana broke her heart. To placate her, Mariana reads the diary and realizes how much she has hurt Anne. Both the women are moved to tears, and Anne apologizes for writing her feelings without any filters, while Mariana apologizes for leaving Anne for a man. They reconcile, and Mariana points out that Mr. Lawton's eating habits are not healthy, and he's old, insinuating that Mr. Lawton might not have much longer to live, so they can plan a respectable future together as a widow and her companion. To mark this promise, the two women visit a jewelry shop and buy wedding bands to wear around their necks as an engagement, and the day Mariana comes to live with Anne, they shall wear the ring on their fingers. The two soon part ways, and Anne is back at Shibden. Now that Mariana has instilled hope in her, Anne ignores Miss Brown's attention, who is left wondering what went wrong between them. But things take a different turn when Uncle Lister and Aunt Lister share their wish to see Anne get married. Since neither of them is married, they don't want Anne to miss out on things that they missed, and they make sure she doesn't oppose them this time. Anne, once again, turns to her diary to take out her frustration, but is determined not to be vexed. One day, a local industrialist named Christopher Rawson visits Shibden. Anne is not happy with him, particularly because of their contradictory views. Mr. Rawson mentions he is quarrying coal in his estate. They also have Miss Anne Walker's company, and when Anne gets to know that Miss Anne's brother and Mr. Rawson are collaborating to dig a mine on Miss Walker's estate, Anne is curious to know if it is worthwhile. Mr. Rawson mentions that he is going to be as rich as Mita's, and stresses how profitable the business is. Some days later, Mr. Rawson visits Shibden again with the intention of talking to Anne. He mentions that Uncle Lister was the one who called him and told him about the unexplored assets in their estate. Anne is glad that her uncle finally realizes its worth. Mr. Rawson suggests they join their estates and proposes marriage to Anne, but Anne denies his proposal and states she cannot marry without love. This changes Mr. Rawson's demeanor, and he calls Anne foolish to turn down an opportunity to grow. He states that he had come there despite the rumors about Anne, and knowing that people call her Gentleman Jack, before fiercely walking away. That night at dinner, Anne tells her uncle and aunt that she doesn't want a husband, but wants her independence, and wants to be a proud Lister until the day of her demise. She assures her aunt she won't be lonely, as she wishes to live with a female companion. Her aunt and uncle agree to her wishes and let her be. It is Anne's birthday, and she prepares for her friend's arrival, but more for Mariana's. Once the three friends are together, Tib gifts Anne a book, which Anne without much consideration says she already has, and she'll gift it to her aunt. In her excitement to see Mariana, Anne inadvertently hurts Tib. Next, she opens the gift from Mariana and finds a lace neck piece, and Mariana says she hates that Anne wears all black. She helps Anne put on the lace, while Tib feels like a third wheel between the two lovebirds. The two are so lost in each other that they don't realize Tib has already left. They soon gather for dinner, and Tib has a little too much to drink as she tries to drown her sorrows, and ends up making indirect sarcastic remarks on Mariana and Anne's secret relationship. Anne tries to protest and asks Tib to stop drinking, but Tib doesn't care, and in the end, falls to the ground in a stupor. Anne and a house help escort Tib to her bedroom. Later, in Anne's bedroom, Mariana is not at all happy with how Tib behaved, and says she is jealous of their relationship. She is also not happy that Anne had relations with Tib while she was away, completely forgetting that she was the one who left Anne in the first place. Mariana doesn't stop there and lectures Anne on fidelity, asking her to be faithful if she wants to be with her. So the next morning, Anne goes to talk to Tib, who has made arrangements to leave, as she cannot stay there seeing the two women together. She tries to warn Anne that Mariana is not worthy of her, but Anne just thanks Tib for the book and kisses her goodbye. Anne and Mariana continue their relationship while Mariana is at Shibden. But the day before she is to leave, Mariana's demeanor changes. Anne wants Mariana to leave Mr. Lawton and live with her, but Mariana refuses and says she needs to go back to her husband. She assures Anne that Mr. Lawton is ailing, and they will be together soon. Mariana soon leaves, and Anne is left with her memories. She eagerly waits for the day she and Mariana can be together. Sometime in autumn, Mrs. Priestley's nephew and Miss Walker's brother pass away, leaving Miss Walker with immense responsibility for the estate and lands they owned. After some days, Anne attends a party with her family and friends. The Lawtons and Rossins are also present at the party. But Anne's eyes search for Mariana, and when she sees her, she immediately goes to greet her. But Mariana is unhappy to see that Anne is wearing their engagement necklace and has put it out on display, drawing attention to herself. But before she can say anything, Mr. Lawton joins them, and Anne is surprised to see him doing well, unlike what Mariana had told her. Mr. Rawson greets Anne, but seeing her still disinterested, he can't help but pass remarks on her, addressing her sarcastically as a learned lady. Anne ignores Mr. Rawson's remarks and goes to talk to Mariana, while Mr. Rawson has his own little conversation with Mr. Lawton. When Mariana returns to Mr. Lawton, he acts rather aggressively and asks Mariana how Anne loves her. But Mrs. Priestley intervenes right on time to prevent things from getting awkward. Later that evening, Tib tries one more time to confess her love for Anne, but bound by the promise to Mariana, Anne refuses to engage, and they break their friendship after Anne tells Tib she doesn't love her. Some days later, Anne gets a letter in a box from Mariana. The letter states that Mr. Lawton suspects her, which is why she won't be writing to her anymore, and in the box she has returned all of Anne's letters, because she cannot allow Mr. Lawton to find them. She also asks Anne not to write to her anymore. Anne is once again in a dilemma about her feelings and whether she can trust Mariana, or she's just wasting her time waiting for someone who might never become hers. Anne's uncle soon passes away, and Anne inherits Shibden. After the funeral, she writes to Mariana, telling her that she has become the mistress of Shibden, and each day she is working to make Shibden their home. She asks Mariana to come to Shibden so they can plan a way to be together. Mariana writes back, telling Anne that she will be passing through Halifax next month. She asks Anne to meet her at the coaching inn, and they can decide what can be done. When the time comes, Anne rushes to meet Mariana and catches the coach in the middle of the road, shocking Mariana. Once they're at the inn, Mariana shows her displeasure at Anne's blatant display, and tells her that she can't be with Anne, because she would rather perish than let their relationship be known to the public. She asserts that women can't marry, but they could have a good life by seeing each other often, but that excludes living together. Anne realizes Mariana was playing with her feelings all along, giving her false hope of living together one day. She tells Mariana she wants to live with someone who has a strong character. Mariana asserts Anne can't live without her, but Anne is done with Mariana. She hurls her engagement necklace and leaves. After the incident, Anne cannot bring herself to live at Shibden, and proposes to her aunt they take a long vacation to Paris. As they are set to leave, Mr. Rawson visits Anne and asks Anne to lease some of her land to him so he can sink a mine, but offers a very low price. This enrages Anne, and she decides to take up the mining herself. After studying the map of her property, Anne visits Miss Walker in her large mansion to talk about the coal in her land. Miss Walker reveals that Mr. Rawson had visited her with an offer, but her steward advised her against selling, as the price Mr. Rawson offered was almost an insult. Anne reveals she would like Miss Walker to become her investor, considering she just inherited a fortune. Miss Walker soon sends Anne a bunch of books on engineering from her late father's library to help her understand the mining business. The two women soon become friends and start working on the mine in a business alliance. Anne burns the letters she once wrote Mariana after learning that she is doing well and is happy with Mr. Lawton. However, Miss Walker and Anne get harassed by Mr. Rawson, who isn't happy with the partnership and often sends his men to intimidate their pit workers. After one such incident, Anne suggests Miss Walker stay at Shibden with her so they both can be safe. Miss Walker moves to Shibden and their business flourishes. They soon secure the contract to supply coal to the canal landings, which means they won't have to haul the coal door to door as they have been doing. That day at breakfast, Aunt Lister brings their attention to the marriage announcement in the newspaper, which states Captain Tom Lister of Shibden Hall will be married to Miss Anne Walker, taking a jibe at the relationship Anne and Miss Walker share. The news spreads, and this prompts Mrs. Priestley to visit Shibden to convince Miss Walker to return to her mansion. She mentions that people are insinuating things that might prevent Miss Walker from securing a husband, but Miss Walker asserts she doesn't want a husband. Mrs. Priestley leaves after she demands that Miss Walker return to her home immediately, before she tarnishes the family name for good. After contemplating what to do, Miss Walker tells Anne she wishes to stay at Shibden with her. Anne questions Miss Walker if she understands what is being insinuated. Miss Walker says she does, and the two kiss, suggesting Miss Walker wants a romantic relationship. The two exchange rings and vow to be with each other in a small marriage ceremony in the bedroom. One day, Mr. Rawson visits Anne and asks if she would like to buy his mine pit, since he is in desperate need of money. Anne outrightly refuses and asks him to never show his face again, after everything he made them go through. Another day, while planting plants in the greenhouse, Miss Walker goes to fetch more soil. While she is gone, someone approaches from behind and playfully covers Anne's eyes. Anne turns to find it is Mariana. Mariana notices the ring and realizes the announcement in the papers is true. Anne explains she has found someone, and she likes Miss Walker very much. But Mariana isn't convinced, and tells Anne that she can now leave Mr. Lawton, because he barely notices her, and has acquired other female interests. She asks Anne if there still is a place for her in her heart. She also adds that she was foolish to worry about trivial things, and tries to coax Anne, reminding her that she can't love Miss Walker the way they have loved each other. But Anne makes it clear that Mariana had made a choice, and it was not her. So now that she is happy with someone who genuinely loves and cares for her, she isn't willing to throw that away for the woman who left her. Mariana regretfully leaves. Miss Walker returns, and the two continue planting flowers. Later, it is revealed that Mariana lived with her husband until his demise at the age of 89. Tib remained unmarried and lived all her life with her family. Anne passed of a fever at the age of 49 while traveling with Miss Walker in the Caucasus Mountains. Her diaries lay hidden at Shibden Hall, and were only fully decoded 150 years later.